Hey guys, and welcome back to another video for Alex's Flying Club. I am in the Flight Simulator Microsoft FS9, and I'm flying in a freeware model of the Beechcraft 18. This model is made by Milton Shupe and team, and it's available for FS9 and FSX. I've been trying out multiple versions of this aircraft. It's a very popular freeware aircraft, and I've tried it in both simulators, and I actually recorded this flight in FSX, but I got a crash. I don't think it's related to the aircraft. I think it might be related to some of the scenery that I had downloaded prior. But I tried it in FS9, this flight, and I also got a crash. But that was toward the very end of the flight, and I'm sorry there won't be a landing in this flight, but it'll end like right when I see the airport off in the distance, and I'm on my descent and about to start my approach. So that's where this video will end, and here I'm just going through the starting procedure, making sure that the main fuel tanks are selected. And there's a kind of a funny trick with the cabin lighting in the virtual cockpit, which I'll show a little bit later. So I'm going through the checklist here. I checked the voltage of the battery, checked the fuel state, although I'm not sure if it actually shows you the correct level when the engine is off. I'll have to experiment with that. And I did record this prior, so I'm doing this narration after the fact, and I recorded this this flight yesterday. Okay, and I select the second engine, which we start before the first engine, and put mixture to full rich, make sure the magnetos are both on, crack the throttle about 1/8 of the way, and turn on the fuel pump. It does not make a noise in FS9 for some reason. The FSX model does have a little churning, chugging noise with the fuel pump. Give it a couple shots of primer. Make sure the starter selector is set to right, which I didn't do initially. Should have done that before the primer, I believe. Then just hit the starter switch. Oh, I forgot to turn on the starter battery. There's actually two batteries, left and right. The left one is for the starter sequence, and you can turn the starter battery off after you've started both engines. And you want to make sure it's idle with this aircraft at between 1,000 and 1,200 RPM. So I'm just going to repeat the same procedure for the second engine, and I'll talk a little bit more about the Beech 18. So I've been looking for a good aircraft that I can fly VFR. I've been getting more into VFR flights lately. I kind of want to limit my time that I spend in flight simulators, and I've kind of have three areas of focus. One area is my combat flying with the Squadron and Aces High. The second one is I do one or two, occasionally more flights for Virtual United Airlines per month, and that will be in the Boeing PMDG 737 NGX, a very popular aircraft, and a very nice add-on. I just started using it recently, and I'll do some video in that aircraft. And then for VFR, I've chosen the Beech 18. If you've been following my videos, I really like the DC-3. I've done a lot of videos on the DC-3, and the Beech 18 is very similar, same time period, developed in the 1930s, both twin-engined aircraft, but the Beech 18 is actually in real life a lot smaller than the DC-3, and that's something I didn't realize until I actually saw both aircraft. The DC-3 is actually pretty massive compared to the Beech 18. I think the Beech 18 is maybe like only 6 feet longer than like a Beechcraft Baron, and once you get inside the Beech 18 into like the cabin area and come up to the cockpit, which I did in a real life one in a museum in Edmonton, where I currently live, then you kind of really notice how small of an aircraft it is. You kind of have to duck down in the cabin. You can't stand at your full height, and the cockpit's like very compact, and that's one of the things I actually like about it. I like kind of a cockpit where, you know, everything's within your reach, and yeah, it's just a pleasant aircraft. It's very classic, very famous lines, very famous kind of fuselage shape with the twin tail configuration. And here I'm about to take off. I'll focus on that for a second here. Turn on the pitot heat, turn on landing lights, and the fuel pumps. And one of the checklists that I have says to open cowl flaps halfway. The other one says to keep them completely open. I'm not really sure what's the correct procedure. Elevator trim is just what I pointed to, and it took me the longest time to find it in this cockpit. It's that you can barely see it from the default view if you look down down to the right of the pilot's seat. I lower flaps 1 notch for takeoff. While I was talking earlier, I set the radios for navigation. I've got it set to our first VOR that we'll be going to. And I'm going to hold the brakes as I increase the throttle. And I didn't give enough power for the takeoff. You'll see I barely clear the trees. And I was trying to keep it in the green line of the manifold pressure gauge and within RPM. But I should have just kept RPM at 2200 and maxed out manifold pressure just to get this thing to take off, because at this power setting that I have in the green line, it really takes a while for it to gain speed. And here I quickly give a max throttle and barely make it over those trees. So, lesson learned for future takeoffs, hopefully. And you want to gain a little bit of speed after you raise your gear, and then eventually raise your flaps. And then now I'm proceeding to my course. We're a little bit left of the radial that I want to follow for the VOR. So I'm going to go a little bit left of the heading bug. The heading bug's kind of funky in these aircraft, but I find it really convenient actually, because it overlaps the compass needle, so you can kind of tell when you're easily tell when you're following the course and when you're deviating from it. There I turned off the starter battery, which I forgot to do earlier. Excuse me. Took a drink of coffee. And there's the Mississippi River. I forgot to mention where we're flying from and what this flight means. So I'm flying from the Quad Cities, a small airport near the Quad Cities, to Iowa Falls, Iowa. And that was Iowa Falls was the last stop where I've stopped on my Discover USA tour that I started doing earlier this year. And I'm continuing to do this tour. I'm taking this aircraft from Chicago's Executive Airport, which I consider to be one of my home airports since I am from Chicago. And I'll be flying to Iowa Falls to continue the tour. And one of the things I like about VFR flying is I like the idea of having an aircraft that is kind of like your real life aircraft, where you can kind of take it from city to city, not just jump around all over the world, but have consecutive flights. And you know, ideally it would model the engine damage and the airframe damage as you go along, kind of like AccuSim. And there are some freeware options available for that. One is called the damage mod that may be customizable to other aircraft, but currently it's for the Bonanza, the Baron, and a couple other aircraft. But the designer of that kind of keeps chugging away at putting out more aircraft for that mod. And the other one is called Real Engine version 1.4 is the latest one at the time I'm making this video. And that one also models engine damage and kind of shows you, just makes the aircraft more sensitive to the inputs that you're giving it. You can follow the spark plugs, you can, if you're running the engine at too high of an RPM or manifold pressure, you can damage it a lot more easily than the default simulator allows you to do. So, that being said, I'm gonna try to see how far I can make it on, just considering this my personal aircraft here, and trying to be consistent and fly with Beech 18, and slowly building it up. There's definitely some modifications I want to apply to this version. For one thing, there's been a fix to add the stars on top of the wings. You see them on the bottom, but they're not on top. So there's a fix for that available on Flight Sim Library, excuse me. And then also some cockpit modifications, and you'll probably see those in future videos. I wanted to do the first video with the default Milton Shupe Beech 18, and there I pointed to the cylinder head temperatures being too low. That's because I forgot to close the cowl flaps, which I just did right now when I remembered that. And you have to close the cowl flaps during cruise, because then otherwise your engine will run too cold. So I'm passing by the first VOR, and now I'm adjusting course so that we track the next VOR. And the weather that you're seeing along with the sunset is Rex with Overdrive for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2004. And this is a package which I bought on sale right before I actually switched to FSX, and haven't had much of a chance to use it, but I'm thinking this is a good opportunity since I'll be flying the Beech 18 in 2004 to start. This is a good opportunity to showcase Rex, because it's kind of nice. The effects of the weather and the sun lighting is a little bit better than the default FS2004. We are flying in the end of the day, so the sun will be gradually setting, and by the end of the video it'll be almost nighttime. And I really like the effect of kind of the pinkish sky. It'll turn purple and eventually really dark blue. And there I was showing the radio panel. It's kind of like the old school DC-3 radio panel. It takes a little while to get used to, and for one thing, this model, in the state that I'm showing it, the default FS9 version, you don't have a nav2 radio. You just have nav1 for the ILS, but I believe you have two ADF radios and two COM radios, if I'm not mistaken. There I'm showing my RPM needles jumping. I'm not sure why that's happening. It might just be my throttle setting. There I jumped ahead a little bit. And here I'll show you the kind of trick with the lights. When all the lights are off, the instrument lights are also off, but when you turn any one of these lights on, beacon, strobe, or recognition, the instrument lights turn on, and panel as well. But to get to the actual cockpit light, overhead light to turn on, there's a special button in the virtual cockpit for that, and it's right there, right below the altimeter. And that'll turn the cockpit lights on and the instrument lights. but I usually don't use that. I like to have just the instrument lights on when I'm flying at night. Unless you're flying in a dark room and you need some light to look at a map or something, then you can turn on the cockpit light, and actually the light from my laptop will illuminate whatever paper I'm looking at in front of me, which is kind of nice. But typically I don't have the overhead light on. So here I'm going to start the descent. I decrease the throttle. You want to make sure keep your RPMs at about just a little bit lower, but about the same general range as you did during cruise, because otherwise your cylinder head temperatures will drop. And yeah, I'll post all the links to the add-ons, etc. that I've been mentioning down in the description of the video. And I'll be continuing to fly, hopefully, with the Beech 18 and show you some of the modifications available. And as we're descending here, I'm going to show you the airport is off in the distance, and then the video will kind of end abruptly because my FS9 crashed. And since I was so close to the airport, I didn't want to do another film and another flight because I just got so close to the destination. And from now on, I'll be saving the flight as I'm flying. But thank you for watching the video, and see you guys next time.